everybody that's supposed to be here is here.
Yep.
So the first issue is the assessment results, 2-year assessment results, which, oh, yeah, I want the, you know, I want the, kind of the interpretation of this. I mean, I looked at them all, and
I'm happy to
looks like
jump into
it's
the forward.
pretty much, yeah, sure.
Okay. Sadly, I can say status quo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks frozen and kind of
Yep,
almost.
it's kind of frozen. I would say that as I dug into it, I wasn't excited. I
no
also
kidding.
wasn't, I was actually a little more sad, just disappointed that we didn't see some bigger gains. It's interesting when you kind of look, you know, through the schools, maybe they went down in one category and went up in another, so there really wasn't a lot of increase. The only school that we have that's currently above the state in ELA is, or reading is Riverview. The rest of our schools are below the state, and that's new. We haven't always fallen below the state across the board. And we are across the board below the state in math as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so,
Looks like Jackson is the worst.
do they have the lowest score? Is that what you're
Well,
saying?
Monroe has got a minus 10.2 on math. Well, yeah, I guess Monroe and Jackson are.
Do have the lowest scores, you are correct.
Well, anyway, yeah, it's kind of.
So really status
what do-
quo
what do-
seems
what
to
do-
kind
what
of
do
be
you-
where we're at for that, and I don't really know that there's too much more to say other than
Yeah,
we have plans in place and we're very hopeful
Okay.
that we're gonna see some improvement and
yeah, that was my question. What are we doing now that makes you
we
feel,
have a pretty targeted intervention process in place for ELA that started last year, or for reading, I should say, it's not writing, it's reading. At the elementary level, and for the middle schools, we're starting that this year, and we're gonna be writing more about that in the upcoming director's report in some more detail with some examples of things for you, so we haven't really had that solid process in place for that focus on tier 1, or our universal instruction is really what we talked about the most the last couple of years. So now to be digging in with what we can do to intervene, and Act 20 certainly set that ball in motion in a really good way, but now we're extending that to 4K, having expectations and a clear plan for 4K and our middle schools this year, so that's exciting work. And we are beginning in like a prelude to something you'll hear about coming up, is we're beginning conversations about the necessity of having math interventionists at every school. Right now, we don't have anyone to support math intervention at elementary or middle school. And we know that that's something that is, that we'll be bringing to you at some point here in the spring, I hope, or sometime soon.
yeah.
Cause we all recognize that there's a need there, so.
Yeah. So this doesn't represent the transition. These are both successful all years, aren't they?
Yes, indeed.
Well, maybe it was a good thing that it was successful for more than the money and the, you know, the overwhelming dominance it had over everything else.
One thing that we never really talked about much, in the last couple of years with SFA was just this idea of an implementation dip, and to expect big things to come during an implementation year. That's not realistic, and there's nobody who would say that that's a thing. When you implement new curriculum, teachers are de-skilled for a time
Yeah,
where they're
yeah.
trying to figure it out. And so sadly, we've thrown them back into that this year, and so we might see a sort of a neutral data set again next year, but I would hope to see things pick up. But we are
Well,
gonna have.
we reached the peak in the first year, actually, with successful, and then it eroded the next year.
Well, we really didn't actually have a peak.
Well,
The
yeah,
state
but
changed
they
the way
were,
that
they were running that for the election for sure,
right.
but, you know.
I would say that we were pretty neutral last year too, because we made the same gains that the state made.
Yeah,
And so, yeah, but I'm hopeful.
All
That's
right.
where we leave this, I'm hopeful.
One of the, I'm sorry.
hopeful, not optimistic, but hopeful.
So one of,
I'm
I mean,
optimistic.
I wanna be
and hopeful.
optimistic.
I don't wanna use this as an excuse, but when you were talking about that first year, our math program, was that the first year last year? You said it had been your 2
Math?
years. Yeah.
Oh, it's been quite a long time.
I thought we got a new,
We've been in Bridges for
Five?
5 years,
It's
yeah.
up for a cycle.
Maybe more.
okay,
I would say
and that
that
hasn't,
overall, we've been pleased with Bridges and, we surveyed the staff in the spring, fall. I don't know what season is it right now. And
You're working
our
through that.
staff are very interested in moving forward with just, adopting their update instead of doing a new curriculum. One of the things that we're hitting pretty hard this year is that, again, that intervention piece. Classroom teachers can only do so much without an interventionist to support them. But getting teachers the training that they need, the principals are working with me and we're working with CISA 7 to support that work. So I hope we're gonna see it
So this year is year 1, right?
for
I mean,
math,
Really, we've started we turned a page.
for ELA.
Yeah, for ELA
Yes.
and for
Math.
reading and math.
Math is not a change.
Okay, it's not, I thought it was gonna be.
No.
What I was gonna ask is, could you just, like, even just as an example, I know you're probably doing the director's report too, but, even, I'm encouraged to see the targeted training that continues with, you know, our new program, the things they're bringing in, even though we know that we got a lady who did things yesterday. Do you wanna just talk a little bit about the type of work we're doing still around the new curriculum to help people?
We had a PD yesterday, on Monday, for the half of the elementary, so like teachers for the clubs that they're gonna be starting soon. And then at our next PD day, the K2 teachers are getting a training on small group reading, so we're trying to give people very specific trainings. The principals are working also with the trainers in sessions where we're learning about what to look for and give teachers feedback on. So there's work going on with the principal team. They're the ultimate instructional leader of their building, whether there's other people to support that work. At the end of the day, it falls on our principals. That is a huge part of their job description. So we're doing what we can to get them educated. I know with the other curriculum rollouts that we have going on, it's the same thing where we're making sure that we're offering PD sessions for principals as well.
I like the idea that we have a plan on how to help. Just thinking, you know, at what point do we have to look to say, is there anything else we can do? To just,
Well, interventionist is one thing.
yeah, and I think that part of this is probably important.
Yeah, I don't know what that would cost. We'll find out. We can discuss it with them, I guess, but it seems to me a no-brainer.
He's also been working really closely with our reading teachers at the elementary and middle school level, and I do feel like, to your point, there's a very systematic approach, and we have some consistent interventions that we're training our reading teachers to use and implement. They're using data to target kids specifically, so I think we're in a position where, you know, our experts in teaching more remediated reading, targeted tiered reading intervention have the tools they need to, and I think they're feeling like they know who to tackle and they have some tools to do that, and I think we're catching the right students right now and targeting some interventions, so that work I feel like, as someone who's observed that or been part of middle school conversations, has been really meaningful too, and really, I think we'll see a positive impact of that.
You know, when I read the stuff about the middle schools, the grading policy or program, the grading schools, I thought, that looks pretty good. Why aren't we doing that more than the middle? I mean, because it teases out like what they're weak at, what they're good at, what they need to work on, and it's sort of like, it's multiplying the targeting in some ways. On the stuff that, you know, first of all, it's a discovery process. Like, why is this kid like, you know, not doing so well? So you test a number of different things and you come up with, oh, wow, he needs glasses, or, you know, something. So it seems to me that, you know, that sort of refinement is a pretty hot idea too, but I don't know. Is it applicable on the way down from middle school?
Our elementary report cards already convey proficiency and mastery at standards in a little different way.
Okay,
Which was sort of why we felt like it was appropriate to make the transition to middle school standards-based grading, because our
Okay.
elementaries are already doing that now.
okay,
It's not the exact language. Lincoln already does this too. It's a little bit different version. Lincoln still associates some percentages and letter grades to their standards, but ultimately it's a 4-3-2-1 rubric.
yeah,
So we do have a focus on standards and proficiency at every level. So
okay,
we're
yeah.
communicating more than just grades. We do have, you know, our teachers are able to say to students, this is what proficiency looks like, and here are the skills that maybe you need to work on a little bit more, so.
Heidi, you mentioned book groups. Are they book reading groups? Explain what that is.
The K2 teachers are doing small group instruction using
Okay,
using-
too.
using books. The book clubs that are for
Book
grades
clubs, yeah.
3 through 5, those are, the first lessons that teachers teach are about getting kids used to being part of a book club and teaching them how to do a book club with the goal of releasing them to have some independence. And of course, if students can't handle that independence, they pull them back, and some kids might always meet with the teacher or more often meet with the teacher, but the goal is to get kids excited about books and reading books and discussing books at the 3-5 level.
I think that's good.
this is just a suggestion. I just wanna put a plug in there for efficacy, okay? Very happy that the teachers are happy with the math curriculum we're using. I have data here in front of me the last 2 years. I don't have longitudinal data for the last 5. However, if it's not effective,
Yeah,
no
right.
matter how beloved we are of it,
Yeah.
if it's not working, we have to look at something else. The other thing that I do wanna say is we have schools that are longitudinally more or less effective. I hope that we are looking at those schools that are being highly successful in certain areas and seeing if there's a secret sauce they're using
Yeah, right.
that we can put into effect. And my last thing on efficacy is, this is true of the reading teachers, this is true of when we get them, the math teachers, math coaches, whatever you wanna call them. We need to make sure those people are being highly effective and that the principals are very proactive on making sure that they are. Because not everybody's right for every job. I know people I worked with that would have made a great reading coach, but a horrible math, and ones that would have made a great math coach, but a horrible reading one.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Thank you for that, and I will just
Yeah.
emphasize that we're not looking for math coaches, but math interventionists.
Well, right, I'm
And
just
there is
using the
such a-
term.
I just wanna say that's a significant difference, because we want people that can come into every grade level during intervention time and pull kids and do intervention as an expert. And also, they can obviously be participating in PLCs and supporting learning for teachers, but our goal with that role would be like our reading teachers right now are interventionists. They
Well, you
don't
want
coach
somebody who's
teachers.
licensed for an intervention.
We
Sure.
want someone who is an expert at math and is gonna do a great job doing math intervention for students, not leading teachers.
So, I guess to Chris's thought, do we, and I don't wanna say this the wrong way, so if I offend somebody, I don't need to do this. But do we see differences? Can we find differences between the schools that are doing better and the schools that are struggling? I mean, have we identified anything that says, Kennedy Grade School is really doing this well and that's why their scores are higher? I mean, have we found anything like that, or, you know, are we looking for those kind of things, or?
I think there's pockets, but I spend a lot of time in the schools, and I would say, I will feel confident and excited about investigating a school that is achieving at the proficient level. And feeling like that's something we wanna hold up, like that's something we wanna really explore, and we currently don't have that. We actually don't have a school that's performing at the proficient level in ELA or math, and that's sad to say out loud so that's where I'm kind of looking for us, we need to continue to grow, and when you kind of see a school performing or outperforming the other schools repeatedly and growing,
Right.
I think that's one of the things that, that matters, and so, yes, we do have pockets and we're aware of that, but, and we try to use that as best that we can, but that can come down to a myriad of things, so it's something that we talk about and think about.
I mean, Madison's pretty high achieving school. And, performs above the expectations. And and it's unique in some ways, and I'm kind of inclined to think it's an environmental thing or a cultural thing, that, different schools, even different classrooms have a different culture. I don't, and like, to use the term secret sauce, I thought was right on, because it's very elusive to find out what is happening there to make it better than what's happening somewhere else. And you can, run all the stuff like, how many economically challenged families there are, but it doesn't, it doesn't seem to boil down to just a few obvious things.
It doesn't, you're right.
If I could step in for a minute, I think one of the things that we're in the process of is changing, speaking of culture, our culture to a results-oriented culture.
Yeah.
Which I would not have wouldn't have described this district as having a results-oriented culture.
Right.
And I think, the more that we are able to help people become aware of how kids are performing in these specific areas, for example, from our Fast Bridge scores or from these team-developed assessments that we're gonna use together to measure their progress. I really believe the key is focusing on the output. What are we getting in terms of output? And I think once we turn the corner in constantly looking at the output, instead of trying to put our finger on what input is gonna move the dial, typically your best results come from a focus on the results that you're looking to get. So it's no different than the research about people who say, if you write down a goal, you're more apt to achieve it. If you have a plan and backwards design a goal, these are the things that we just have to become it becomes what we do in our district. And I think it starts at that level of the classroom teams. Those classroom collaborative teams who are looking for the same goals of learning for their kids, how do they find out specifically what they're doing in their classrooms and how it's impacting the level of learning? And then I believe at the most micro level, so we're talking about comparing what's happening in schools, I'm talking about what's comparing in classrooms. And so it could be in the same school that we have a third grade team where these results are at 60%, these are at 70, and these are at 80. The question that should be asked through the process, which we're investing time and effort into, which is this collaborative process for our adults, is not only to focus on the outputs in terms of what kids are learning, but also for our adults to learn from each other as to what works best.
Right.
And I think that's where we're trying to go. And as I talked with all of you in our individual meetings next month at this committee, we're gonna be bringing out, a way that we're gonna look at measuring outputs in a little more intentional way. And in my belief, a focus on the outputs and the results orientation will help get us to growth. And we just haven't been there. We have to get there.
Well, the tradition of education is, through my experience at least, is social darwinism. It's like the teacher comes in, gives out the information, tinkers around with it a little bit, and then you're pretty much on your own. And if you come from an upper middle class house, you do better than somebody that's got a single mother on the night shift. But I think that what we're doing is we're shifting to a very deliberate cover all the bases, check all the stuff, you know, evaluate. And that seems to me a pretty positive set of changes. And I'm expecting more than we've got in these 2 years, but, and since, I'm optimistic because I think we're really making those changes. And the stuff that we're talking about today is evidence of that, I think. So I think we're in for a good future in a sense. I'd like to see the school system come back to be like, do it the way they do it in Manitowoc.
Exactly.
Katie, did you wanna speak about ACT?
Sure. Could switch to ACT.
Yeah, ACT, yeah. That's the next thing.
That's the next thing. So,
Yeah, that
just in
stayed pretty
case
much the
you're
same too, yeah.
not super up to date on high school standardized assessments, our 9th and 10th graders take the pre-ACT Secure every spring, and our 11th graders take the ACT. What I will tell you is that, as you can see, these numbers aren't wonderful. We did show a little bit of growth in our 11th grade ACT assessment, I think up like a 0.2 of a point or something like that, from the year prior. What is missing from this screen document is state comparisons. So we are about 2 points below the state composite for composite ACT, math composite, all of the separate subject area composites at the state level. So for example, our 24-25 composite for ACT was 17.8, the state is 19.2. And just in general, we are about 2 points below the state in every subject area on both the ACT and the pre-ACT. Our 9th and 10th graders have been underperforming the state by pretty significant margins for the last couple of years, as you can see based on this data. In response to that, our high school team is very strategically implementing, as part of their 100-day plan work that they'll come to the board and talk with you about, is they're very strategically selecting ACT strands from ELA subject areas that each of their departments can focus on and work on and incorporate as part of how they're implementing instruction. So they're very intentionally taking a look at strands of the ACT that will help with the literacy, help math for the math team, science for the science team. They're taking a content area strand that will help them focus and hopefully improve some efforts. They're also looking very carefully at how questions are asked on the ACT and incorporating how we're asking questions on assessments that they're developing as part of their own formative assessments in the classroom. So the team has been working very hard at digging into the ACT and pre-ACT tests in order to support instruction. And they're working on that through their PLC meetings on a weekly basis, and they're working on that work together as buildings on staff development days. So I do think we will continue to see growth, hopefully more than the little baby step, but it is growth. But hopefully a little more than that. I think, the other work that the high school team is doing is they have an instructional coach as well. And they're targeting our 9th and 10th grade ELA classes and teams in order to help do some remediation and some skill building for those students, where we're just seeing that underperformance. And there's a bigger question at play when we look at our assessment data and we look at our grading practices and we look at our STAR scores, which kids are just wrapping up their first session of STAR testing, is that we have kids that are getting good grades in school. They're getting all 4s, they're at mastery level, they're getting A's, which is the equivalent of a 4 on the standards-based grading rubric. But we're not seeing that same level of performance on our statewide tests and also on our internal STAR tests. So how can we do some comparatives? And, you know, and that's where I think we were seeing some of that same internal growth in SFA, but we're not necessarily seeing that produced when compared to our statewide same age peers. So, looking at how we are aligning more of our grading practices so that we're using these standardized measures, in order to inform our instruction.
Because if you're testing, you're not necessarily teaching.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad we're doing that now, because it sounds like we weren't stressing those things that, I don't care what test it is, if you're evaluating what the student has learned, but you haven't taught what they're supposed to learn,
Correct.
that doesn't make.
It's also,
Well, yeah, the whole system is getting to be teach for the test now, isn't it? I mean, it's like,
And I think Lincoln's taking a good approach, is that they're looking at how students are, what types of questions we're asking students, so they're familiar with the vocabulary that's being used and
yeah,
and
sure.
and
Well,
so
that's really-
I think, you know, you could take all the former ACT previous practice tests and that's all you could do in your classes, and that's not what that's truly teaching to the test, and that's not what's happening. We're
Yeah,
really
yeah.
trying to make sure that our standards that we're selecting and grading students on are aligned in some way, shape, or form to what they're expected to know to be able to be compared to peers nationally and in the state. So I'm confident. Mr. Amo.
I took the ACT a long time ago. We had to actually chisel out the letter that we were choosing on the test. So I have no idea what is a good score, what is the max score.
Yeah.
So for me, these scores are, I can tell they're the same. But if 20 is fantabulous, then we're doing okay.
If we
So-
could get to 20 composite, it would feel really, really good. I would feel like we are setting kids up for being very well prepared for a future endeavor. 36 is the max
36.
on the ACT.
Yeah,
And
that's
what
right.
the pre-ACT does is it gives you a predictor of what you'll get on the big ACT. So, writing is different. Writing is only out of 12. You can see, we are very much in line with the state and, 6 being sort of that average writing score on the ACT. But 36 is max. I think when I was at Lincoln, we had one student, during my time of APing who got a perfect 36, and they actually get some recognition, which is pretty cool. Smart
we actually
smart
have a
kid.
National Merit Scholar semifinalists, which is coming out. We just did a press release on it today from Lincoln. And we'll have that in our board report for next week. So we have kids who are college bound that are doing fine.
Oh, yeah,
My
yeah, we
son
do.
did fine on the ACT.
Yeah.
I mean, actually way better than his father, which is not surprising, but, so here's the other part of it, and I think it goes back to something, that Mr. Abel was talking about, that word efficacy. The other thing that I would say that is it's not represented in these results is also this big question of what does the ACT mean to me? And for high school students right now, given the fact that our colleges and universities stop using them
Yeah,
for
they-
entrance criteria, there isn't much to go off of other than their own pride. So how do we get our kids to want to be proud of the performance that they do and make sure that they understand that it does have some importance, if not for you, but for our community, because it's a way in which we're measured. And I think those connections for kids have to be made, and we can do a better job of that. But I do think, and I have witnessed, students take the ACT, and they didn't have to chisel, because we're past that now, but they really made the bubbles quite quickly. To the point in which I'm not sure they read each question. So, that's why I feel like what we're trying to do with our multiple ways to assess, and what Katie was talking about is, right now, it seems like we've got grades that are here, our STAR is here, and our state assessment is here. It seems to me the STAR and the state assessment are aligning more than what our current practices are. So what we're trying to do with that data is have our folks take an internal look at, what are we doing and what can we do to make sure that the feedback we're giving kids around the standards we're teaching them helps them achieve at higher levels when we're getting to that point. But it does come down to efficacy in many, many ways, all the way around, whether you're the teacher or the kid or a test taker, it's the same.
And to Lee's point, I think, you know, the team is interested in disaggregating this a little bit further to say, so we know our 200 students that are four-year college bound. Let's see just their ACT scores, and are we getting them ready for
Yeah,
what would be
yeah.
determined to be a college-ready ACT score? Because we do know we have a large portion of our student population that enters the workforce. And again, to Lee's point, it's not necessarily the most meaningful 4-hour test that kids take in a day. But how do we build that, demonstrating what you've learned is important. We're measured by it, but is there a way to give a little meat to that test for kids who may not be 4-year college bound? And our kids don't need it necessarily for most college entrances anymore like we used to.
I mean, when I was a principal, I told them I'd shave my head if we got to a 20. But
We were very
close, actually. I was a little bit nervous when it came in, but no offense.
They'll grow back.
No.
They'll grow back though.
Mine should.
Yours will.
So those are sort of our brutal facts about the ACT and pre-ACT and what we're gonna tackle and try to do about it.
Oh, yeah, we're doing something about it. That's the good
Yep.
news, yeah.
Yeah, gonna do some opportunities to practice the platform, that's part of it too, it's all online, so, an online assessment is very different than having a question book and a response page. You have to navigate and scroll a few different screens, and so opportunities to just navigate that testing platform and be a little bit more comfortable with it always helps kids too. The ACT is changing for next year. This spring implementation, although we were reassured that it would still be able to be comparable results to previous years. So they've done some correlating that way. But the composite score will no longer be made up of all subject areas. It will only be made up of English, reading, and math. The test will be shorter in length. Fewer questions so that kids it's not necessarily a race against the clock, it's more of a let's kind of see what you know. So that's an improvement in my opinion. But if you look at our ACT scores, science is our highest composite area. Our science team for years has done an incredible job of building in again, these ACT test strands and providing some practice opportunities and having questions asked in a similar way. And they've really done a nice job of preparing students for that test. And so our science composite, losing that from overall composite may hurt us a bit. So the team is also looking at what has science been doing and how can we replicate that in other subject areas so that we can hopefully implement some just really good best practices, so.
Okay,
That's where we're at.
anything else? Okay, summer school, seems like a lot better summer school last summer than before.
We
Yeah.
had,
Good suggestions, I thought.
yeah, I would say overall, people were pleased. I think parents, really elementary parents enjoyed having a homeschool opportunity. It was not financially sound decision.
Oh, it wasn't?
No, because we have, like Monroe has 54 kids, like there's
Yeah.
that's not enough kids for a principal, summer school teacher leader. I mean, the principals, are on a contract, but it was a lot of staff for such a few amount of kids. We'll have to discuss like the parents enjoying that on here as a celebration. We have to kind of talk about if that's worth the money of having it spread out. Or if we would go back to a north side, south side sort of an opportunity. I don't know if they could, I feel like the staff did their best to grow the program, but I think with successful summer school, maybe we'll get some additional kids next year. We'll tackle that in the spring more, or in maybe midwinter. Overall, we had an increase of 77 students over the
Yeah.
summer before. Parents definitely want more enrichment opportunities brought back. That's something that we've had in the past.
What do they mean by that?
Arts and crafts.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
they
what I
don't,
thought,
they don't
yeah.
want just learning summer school for their kids,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
that's what their kids need, a lot of them, honestly, that's what our data says.
Yeah,
I wish there was a way we could combine those two things and get something that, you know, maybe we get some additional enrollment for that, but we always have, you offer enrichment and lots of people sign up for that. They don't love the reading, writing, and math as much, and that makes sense, it's summer. Any questions? If you haven't had a chance to look it over, I have.
well, I thought that, you know, a lot of the comments by the consumers, by the parents, I thought were, okay, like don't have all the sports things at the same time.
Yep, their comment, the things they want us to work on made a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Also, running the consistent week, so what happens is the way that we get out of school and we wanna have the teachers get a little bit of a break.
Oh, for
We also
sure.
don't want teachers teaching summer school into August when then we're gonna start in service, and so we try to have that week before 4th of July, and obviously the parents don't love that break, and so we can look at that too. But we really wanna give our teachers a chance to have a little refresh before they start teaching in August and coming back to school, so that's a little bit of a bump there.
Yeah, the teacher said, more planning time for that, yeah.
Well, and one of the things I actually wrote a note on here, I don't know how many years back, it's probably been 4 or 5 years ago. We looked at the summer school pay rate and we increased the overall pay rate. And part of that was, we're not gonna pay you separately for prep. We're just giving you this great pay rate that's very comparable, if not better than surrounding districts. Over the years though, people forget about that. Like if you were teaching summer school, the summer before that happened, you were like, yeah, that's so great. 5 years later, you don't know that happened and you just wanna get paid for prep.
That's
And so I think we might wanna have a conversation. There were people talking about prep again this year. I feel like maybe we need to do a little comp and find out how area districts are paying for summer school. And I think we should take prep out of it honestly and start paying them for prep, because they forget that, you know, your prep is part of your
Oh, yeah.
salary, so to speak, for summer, so it's not a salary, but yeah, I
So
just
how
think
much
it's something I
how much
have
do you
written
pay
down.
them for summer school?
Pardon me?
What is
I believe
the,
it's
Is it a
$32
an hour for instruction.
Yeah.
And 20,
And
30 to 27 for instruction.
what did you say?
There's a lower rate for it's like if it's an enrichment class, I think it's like 27 if it's like arts and crafts and
We
like
don't really have a lot of,
academic.
Gotcha.
yeah, arts and crafts people get a little bit less, but art, music, and, I'm sorry. What did I say? Reading, writing, and math, those people are $32 an hour. But that's including prep, so we're not paying them for that. So I think we gotta tease that out maybe. It's on my list of things to consider.
oh, that sounds, yeah.
Anything else about summer school? I know I'm not writing this
I don't
down.
know, I think, yeah. It seems like we're really on the right track, it's a matter of tweaking it now, yeah,
Tweaks.
yeah. Okay. Middle school grading update, which
All right,
this is kind of
so I'll give you a little background info.
interesting.
Our middle schools, this initiative was actually driven by our middle school teachers. So for the last few years, since we've been under a middle school model, there has been a different grading scale, probably for every department in Wilson, and a different grading scale for every department at Washington. And maybe some of them were the same and most of them weren't, and it was just teams coming up with what they felt like. So, you know, an A in the old model, A might look different or even have a different percentage associated with earning an A between 7th grade English and 6th grade social studies and then 8th grade math, and all the things were different. So there was a very strong appetite from middle school teachers to say, we gotta do something about this. It's really difficult to communicate proficiency and achievement to parents at parent-teacher conferences. It's different for all of us. It's difficult for us to compare student data across the board. Difficult to have conversations between Wilson and Washington and all the things. So they were the drivers of we wanna have something consistent. Lincoln has been doing loosely standards-based grading for the last few years. We have sort of a combo model of standards-based grading at the high school, and and middle school didn't really wanna go that route. Because true standards-based grading does not have percentages associated with it, nor does it have letter grades, because it truly is about communicating what skills the student is able to demonstrate. And it very, very clearly describes what mastery, being advanced, developing, approaching looks like. It also communicates that at the beginning of the year, if we're talking about these long-term enduring standards that students should have mastered by the end of the year, that we would expect them to be in that developing range moving along, because you wouldn't necessarily be proficient or show mastery at a skill or a standard that's something that's going to be measured at the end of the year. So the middle school teams were awesome. A huge kudos to Amanda Pacala and Anna Beatty and Lainey Longmire and Dana Bongo for just really being willing to tackle this, and they have done an excellent job of getting teacher feedback. They held a parent informational session yesterday, because for us, those of us that grew up on a traditional 100-point scale, 4-point scale is confusing. And we think, like, when we think of you doing well in school, you get an A, it should be somewhere between probably a 90 and a 100%, because that's what we know and that's how we're comfortable. Where there has always been some confusion with Lincoln is that they transitioned to a 4-point scale. And so an A on a 4-point scale is 75%. So people in our brains are looking at a 75% and saying, how is a 75% an A? Well, when you're operating on a 4-point scale and not a 100-point scale, it's a thing, and it's confusing. So the middle school team did a great job of putting together some resources, and then hosting a parent meeting. Every resource that they shared at the parent meeting last night will be linked in both of their middle school newsletters. They wanted to be very much out in front of this in advance of parent-teacher conferences coming up in November, so that when parents are sitting at the table with their teachers, the teachers can very confidently speak to what skills and abilities their child is able to demonstrate, and parents already have an understanding of what this is. We had a feedback session on September 3rd, right at like the second day of school. We had a middle school staff meeting, both buildings all together, where we presented some options and information and they voted. It was a 60%, well, more than that. I think it was about 60 people responded, and about an 85% response rate in favor of this option that we landed on, that I will share with you today. So, you have access to, I think, a brochure, but I'll pass out a hard copy for you all,
For sure.
which is pretty cool. So this was passed
Probably
out
easier to read.
yesterday. Yep. I don't know if anyone else is interested in middle school grading. Thanks. Brochure. This was passed out and will be linked online.
Extra.
This basically gives what it is, why we're doing it, what it is. It describes what mastery looks like. It describes what grade checks look like. It also gives some snapshots about what Infinite Campus and a student's grade book will look like if you're looking on the parent portal. So this was a great resource. Then I'm learning something cool in AI, dabbling a little bit in AI, which I'll show you in a moment. So part of our Google Suite has a feature that you can make videos using your own information. So what our team did is we put in our own presentation on the option that was selected. We put in the brochure and we put in our parent info sheet and we said, make a parent video explaining standards-based grading. And Amanda fed it and it turned out pretty great. So we would like to play that for you today. It's 5 minutes, but I think it's a good watch and I think it's a good resource to have out for the public. If you go to the, yeah, thanks, Lori.
Hey everyone, there's a really exciting update coming to Washington and Wilson Middle Schools for the 2025-2026 school year. And it's all about how we look at student success. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through the new standards-based grading system and, really talk about what it means for your child's learning journey. So let's just start with a question. What if a report card wasn't just a letter grade at the end of it all? What if it was more like a detailed map? Something that could show you exactly where your child is on their learning path, and maybe even more importantly, where they're ready to go next. That is the big idea behind this whole new approach. All right, so let's dive in. What exactly is this new approach to grading? Let's break down what we mean by standards-based grading. At its heart, standards-based grading, we'll call it SBG, is all about measuring a student's mastery of specific learning goals. So instead of just averaging a bunch of points from homework and quizzes and tests, we're actually looking at how well they've grasped the essential skills for each subject. And this really gets to the core of the change. With the traditional system, it was all about collecting points. A tough start or one bad test could really drag down an average for the entire semester. But with SBG, the focus completely shifts to what you know right now. The goal isn't about points anymore. It's about showing that you truly mastered the skill. It's an ongoing conversation. Okay, so why are we making this big change? Well, it's all about creating a better, more supportive learning environment for everybody involved. Let's walk through 4 huge benefits this brings to our students, to you as parents, and to our teachers. First off, and this one is huge, is deeper learning. We really want to change the main question from, what do I need to do to get an A, to what do I really need to understand? This helps students engage with the material on a much deeper level, instead of just, chasing points. Second, this puts students in the driver's seat. When they can clearly see the exact skills they need to work on, they can focus their energy right where it's needed most. That kind of clarity is incredibly empowering, and it helps them build confidence as they actually see their own progress. And for parents, this is a game changer. It means so much clearer communication. Instead of saying a B in science and wondering, okay, what does that even mean? You'll see specific feedback on skills like analyzing data or constructing arguments. You'll know exactly what your child's strengths are and where they might need a little extra support. And finally, this system is an amazing tool for our teachers. All that detailed feedback doesn't just go to you and your student. Our teachers can look at the data and see, wow, okay, it looks like half the class is struggling with this one specific concept. They can then adjust their teaching to target those exact needs and make sure everyone gets the support they need to succeed. So, how are we actually going to measure and report on all this progress? Well, we're moving away from the old A through F letter grades and using a 4-level proficiency scale instead. Let's take a look. Think of this as the path to mastery. A student usually starts out at developing, when they're brand new to a topic. As they practice and learn more, they'll move up to approaching. The big goal for every student is to be meeting the standard by the end of the course. And, some might even get to advanced, which means they're really showing an understanding that goes beyond what's expected. Now, you might see 2 other marks in the gradebook. NE just means no evidence. That's our code for a missing assignment that needs to be turned in. And NA means the teacher just doesn't have enough work yet to make a call, which is pretty common right at the beginning of a new unit. And this is a really, really important point I want to emphasize for parents. Seeing developing or approaching is completely normal. It's expected, actually, especially when a new topic is just being introduced. Learning is a process, right? The key thing here is that we expect students to start there and grow over time. It is not a red flag. Okay, so you know what the new proficiency levels mean, but how do you actually track all this progress? We want to make sure you feel totally comfortable here, so let's do a quick step-by-step walkthrough of the Infinite Campus portal. Checking in on progress is really easy. Once you're logged into the portal, it just takes a couple of clicks to get to the main grade screen. This page gives you a great quick overview, and maybe most importantly, it'll flag any missing assignments right off the bat. But to get the real story, you'll want to click into a specific course. That's where you'll find the detailed breakdown with the proficiency level for each individual learning standard. And please, pay special attention to the teacher comments. That's where you're going to find that rich, personalized feedback that can really help guide your student. You know, the whole point of this new system, all of it, is to focus on student growth. And that means we need to have systems in place to make sure students get the support they need right when they need it. This is not about just reporting a grade. It's about actively helping every student learn and improve. So, to make sure everyone stays on track, our staff will be doing regular grade checks every 3 to 4 weeks. If we see a student has missing work, that no evidence code, they'll be assigned after-school homework help. And let me be clear, this isn't a punishment. It's structured time and support to get them caught up. For our student athletes, that accountability also extends to the court or the field. They'll need to get their work done before they can compete. So after going through all the details, it really just comes back to this one central idea. If you remember one thing from this whole explainer, I hope it's this. We are working to build a culture that's focused on genuine, deep understanding, not just on earning a grade. This new system gives us all clearer information than we've ever had before. And that opens the door for a much stronger partnership between all of us, at home and at school. So the final question is really for all of us. How can we team up to support our students' growth this year? We are really excited to partner with you.
Oh, that must be good.
That's a pretty cool
Who
video
did
too.
the narrative? Who did the narrative?
Well, some guy on AI.
Oh, some guy on AI, really? Oh.
It's almost scary.
Isn't it great? The thing that I love about this is it's only our materials that you fed to create. It's not pulling from any external web sources, which is why it's a pretty great tool to use. But anyway, so any questions about?
Yeah, the one concern I have is like, I mean, I remember, adding up things and putting A, B, and C down and then moving on. This is a lot of work for teachers. This is a lot of shuffling through and making judgment calls and looking at evaluation results and all of that. It's like, it really is a pretty work-intensive process. So,
Yeah, and like I said, our teachers have done a great job of diving in. So, a lot of what happens now is that teams work to develop rubrics, so 4-point
Yeah.
rubrics that give descriptors about what proficiency looks like. Through the PLC process, they're working on that rubric development. They're also working on common formative assessments that they will give out. The nice thing about standards-based grading is that it relies more heavily on smaller, more frequent assessments in a common formative assessment as opposed to large summatives, because you want to have frequent opportunities for students to show proficiency.
the class size here is like a real key, it seems to me, right? I mean, if you-
I think always, we're
Always,
thinking
yeah.
about, giving really
But
good
what
quality
is it,
feedback.
what is an
to
agile,
kids.
in a normal classroom, in middle school? Is it under 25?
It depends, it depends
25
on
to
the
27.
subject, yeah, we're very close to that range.
I would just say that, first of all, the elementary teachers have been doing this for years,
Oh, okay,
okay?
And our high school have for about 5 years.
okay.
And the only things, to be honest, the only things that are difficult are, first of all, there's a slew of stuff to assess each time. You don't go reading and put down a letter, you talk about coding, you talk about, and you run everything down, okay? So there's a lot to fill out. The two difficulties are, one, many parents, the first report card of the year, go through the I forget how this works shock. You spend a little time explaining them not to freak out, that your kid, who's always been so brilliant, isn't advanced or exceeding or whatever we're using on this one from the first day through the whole year. So you always have to explain that. And the other thing that your middle school teachers are gonna get, I guarantee them they're gonna get, because I got it forever, was the end of a conversation or you explain how it all works, you get a parent that says, okay, yeah, but if you had to give them a grade,
Yeah, right, I'm sure.
what would it be? So,
Yeah,
you know, it's just how the system works. I believe sincerely that report cards work best when you're doing two. One, you're figuring out what it is you're reporting, and two, who it is you're reporting to. These will be great reporting to teachers at another school if the kids move between schools, or teachers for the next year. We just have to ensure now that the communication works well enough with the parents so that it reports effectively with them too, because those are the two groups that matter, other teachers
yeah, that's true.
and
Parents. Agreed.
I would AI another video that could be used to explain this just to the public. Because there's all those people out there that don't have kids, that are going, what do you mean, 75% gets to an A, it used to be 92 to 100, and because this is a new way of looking at things, it's something that I think sometimes as educators, we forget that we need to also educate those people that no longer are involved in school.
Yeah.
That don't have that same daily, interaction with a teacher. But I think this gives you and I know it's more work. I think
I don't
it
know,
gives
put
you
it
a
on the
very
website.
clear
Put it on
picture
the
of
webpage.
that student that you have that, so yeah,
Like I said, the teams at the middle schools, the administrative teams have done a great
Yeah.
job of supporting teachers. So after we had our vote on September 3rd, then they brought everybody together to look at what the IC grade book setup would look like. So everybody had a tutorial on guided practice in setting up their grade books. They already have their essential standards identified. We've done that work already. That's been ongoing work for the last few years, so that piece was already taken care of. But
And I
the
think one of
teachers
the
have
most-
really embraced it and done a nice job.
one of the most important things you said during this discussion was, this was educator initiative. That they didn't like all doing things differently and they wanted to come together and do this, which makes it, not only, it's gonna make it easier for parents to understand. And that's
Yeah,
important.
they did a great, they've been great. They tackled it right at the beginning of the year and said, we don't wanna wait and we're ready and let's do it, so they did a
Good.
great job. We only had 3 individuals show up at the parent meeting last night. But they felt it was important to offer it, and those parents asked some great questions about, the difference between NA and no evidence NE, some good clarifying questions there, and then they're gonna put this all out on their web pages, so. I just wanted you all to be in the loop, in case you would hear something from parents. So far, it's been pretty well received in info sharing, but around conference time, there may be people that have some questions, so we just wanted to update
Yeah,
you
I
all
thought it
on
was a
what's
great
going on.
concept. I mean,
was planning on it because
it's really diagnostic.
couldn't have a day.
And,
I lived attended, that's why it's.
Well, kids should know what it is they
yeah,
should
and I
know
think
how
that,
to do.
I think that helps,
There you go.
helps the kids a lot too.
There are a number of universities that are moving to competency-based
Yeah,
Mixed.
grading, for lack of better words, so I think the clarity involved in knowing what it is you should walk away
yeah,
knowing
I think the
how to do it.
recording is what this said, it's like, well, if you had to give them,
Money off of
I mean, that would be the question.
and they do, and
Because they're just not conversant in the
big
Well,
language.
we default always
Yeah.
back to what we
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and we all grew up on traditional grading scales, so.
That's true, yeah. Anyway, this is all good stuff. Is there any further business for the committee to take up? So this will just be reported to the whole board, right? And I don't know, did we serve any good purpose on this?
I think we shared
Good
some
discussion.
information and discussion.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yes.
And the minutes will be shared.
Well, no, you kind of, I know, I kind of enjoyed, looking at this stuff and talking about it, et cetera, but, it seems like,
Just because you enjoyed it doesn't mean it didn't serve a purpose.
Just because we didn't vote on anything, Carrie, doesn't
yeah,
really
that's
didn't
true.
matter.
Okay, that's right. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Second.
All those in favor? Oh, wow, we're 2 minutes over.
Heidi can't vote.
I take it back.
Try to be